Welcome back, Tashi Delay, and we are beginning with 213 on page 45, the bottom of the page. Teaching the way of practice through revealing the way of the experiential visions arise. And so this has three parts. The first one is recognizing the way the four visions arise. Secondly, the way of training in the nature of the four supporting visions. And third, the way of seizing your own ground, the ground of great liberation. So continuing on the following page, we take the first of those, recognizing the way the four visions arise. It is further divided into four parts. First, the vision of seeing reality directly, then the vision of increase of experiences, third, the vision of the climax of awareness, and fourth, the vision of being consumed into reality. So those are the four visions of togal that we usually talk about and we have looked at before. So that's the primary focus here, is what are those four visions and what are they about? The descriptions here are similar to, but somewhat different than, what we have looked at in other texts before. Longchenpa has a way of writing rather complex sentences at times, where he puts phrase after phrase after phrase into these sentences, which can make it a little bit difficult to follow exactly what it is that he is saying. And in some cases it's not clear to me exactly what the intent of those are, but we will do our best to follow through on these things. So first we have the vision of seeing reality directly, and this is the one that is most closely related to Trekcho, and so it's important that we have a good solid Trekcho practice before we enter into the togal practice in order to ease into this first vision. The appearances of the luminosity introduced in those ways appear through the four lamps. And so it goes through and describes each of those. The lamp of the far-reaching water lasso, the lamp of the completely pure expanse appears in the empty cloudless sky. That's the second one, the first and second one there. In the middle of that, there are appearances of, third, the lamp of empty bindus, looking at the luminous Vajra chains within those appearances without distraction, evenly rest in the state of the brilliant arising non-conceptual primordial wisdom of luminosity and emptiness. So basically there, the Vajra chains are what appear, bindus and Vajra chains. Sometimes there are some other things that are described as appearing here in the beginning of this, but they are viewed as this non-conceptual primordial wisdom of luminosity and emptiness. So in togal, what we're talking about is a visual representation of the experience we have in Trekcho. So then, the non-dual primordial purity and spontaneous presence of such radiant luminous awareness is called, this is the fourth lamp then, the lamp of self-arisen wisdom. Next paragraph, within the primordial ground, which would be emptiness, the appearances of mind and the present are liberated. This is called the wisdom of ripening of primordially liberated fruition of the nature of the ground as it is. Within the fruition of the ground itself, there is ripening wisdom. By practicing the meaning of what is called wisdom ripening as the enlightened bodies, awareness is placed into the enclosure of the expanse. That's the sky. So the awareness is, we're focused on the sky, basically. The vision of seeing reality directly, which is the vision we're talking about here, lasts up to the point when the eyes directly see the appearance of the three interwoven bindus. Now, he doesn't describe those, but other places talk about bindus inside of bindus. And so it's almost like when you throw a rock into still water and you get multiple rings. It's sometimes compared to that. At this point, one has reached the beginning of the vision of the increase of experiences. Now this is a little different description than we get in other sources that talk about the appearance of the bindus and then the appearance of Vajra chains. They sometimes include a description of these bindus inside of bindus, but they don't all do that. In the next paragraph, furthermore, within the sphere of the precious chitta, the heart, or so from the heart, there is the great form of the light rays of the expanse of the changeless light of the primordial protector. So from our root source, the heart chakra, and remember we talk about the little chain, well, it's a thread that comes out of the heart and to the back of the eyeball, so there's really two of them that come out, and then that basically is understood as projecting that out into the sky. So it's like the sky is the screen and your eyeballs are the projector, projecting that out into there. Within the center of that, the essence is empty. The nature is luminous. Compassionate energy possesses the essence of awareness. From the radiance of inner luminosity that dwells like a colorful peacock inside its egg, the appearances of the enlightened bodies of the peaceful and wrathful deities appear within the great palaces of the Vajra expanse of the Akanishta abode of the Bindu pure realms. Well, let's take this apart a little bit here. So from the inner radiance that dwells like a colorful peacock inside its egg, what it's referring to here is that the tail feathers of a peacock can appear as different colors. And there's usually a circle kind of a shape in the tip of the tail feather, and then there are luminous kind of rainbow-like colors that are also embedded there. So that's what it's referring to here, because that's the appearance that these bindus can take, is that they have various colors and this circular kind of a form. And then we have the appearance of the bodies of the peaceful and wrathful deities within the great palaces of the Vajra expanse. So the palace is actually the sky, the open sky there, and so the peaceful and wrathful deities appearing. Now, they don't usually appear during this first vision. So I think he's leading us in the direction of where this is going rather than saying this is what you see at this particular point. So then within that there are the spontaneous appearances of the illusory forms of the pure realms of the 10 directions, without exception arranged throughout the universe. All of these are filled with the nature of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Viras, and Dakinis. So the nature of all of those are present within these. I think the detail that he's referring to here, though, is something that occurs a little bit later on, usually in the third vision. Then, through the great domain of the excellent Dharma, or perfect Dharma, retinue, abode, time, and teacher, these are those 5 things that are often described as the perfect Dharma, perfect retinue, and so forth. Whenever fortunate yoginis attain the power of oceans of mastery, they will travel to the great Akanishta abode of the great blissful Kachara. And so this is a Buddha field. There they will become what are called Buddhas. This is called attaining the power of the natural pure realms. The secret path of the self-radiance of the universe, of the primordial wisdom of the heart, is the water lamp of the eyes. So again, I think he's projecting ahead in terms of what is going to happen in the process of attaining enlightenment. But then he brings that back and makes this tie to the water lamp of the eyes, which is the projection that's being made from the eyes out into the sky. From this, appearances arise in the outer empty sky. At this time, the sign of the expanse is the sphere of light, or the Bindu. Inside this lamp of the completely pure expanse, there is the sign of compassion, the lamp of the empty Bindus. And so just seeing the empty bindus then is the sign of compassion. In the center of the appearances of innumerable small bindus, Vajra chains arise as signs of enlightened bodies. So the next thing are we see the Vajra chains of bindus connected to each other. Sometimes it's described as being gold in color, other times it can be other kinds of colors. By looking at these, there is great self-luminous awareness, the sign of compassionate energy. So the compassionate energy is the manifestation that appears when we see these things. In completely pure, non-conceptual primordial wisdom, that is the sign of the essence, there is the enlightened mind that is changeless throughout the three times. So enlightened mind, its essence does not change. It is one of those things that is permanent. So when we go back and look at the character of emptiness and the discussions that we've seen about that, one of the things that the Buddha talked about was that all things, all phenomena, ourself and so forth, are not permanent. But this essence is being described here as something that in fact is permanent. So this is something that's a little bit unique in terms of Dzogchen, that the ultimate is considered to be permanent. But when we look at the teachings of the Buddha, we find the same thing being inferred, so that emptiness of inherent existence means the lack of permanence. Okay, lacking inherent existence. And so we infer from that inherent existence is in fact permanent. And that is what we describe as the ultimate in Dzogchen. And so let's see here, changeless throughout the three times. It is the Dharmakaya ground of equality. Signs dissolve within the original primordial purity of great perfection. This is a direct revelation of the extremely secret meaning. The reasons for this, the reasons for seeing the vision of the reality directly are twofold. Temporarily, you will be free from mental fabrications about reality. So we quit thinking about the nature of reality. We've realized that, so we no longer need to analyze or conceptualize or anything. Ultimately, you will be liberated into the primordially consumed ground. And so at the ultimate level, we achieve enlightenment and we achieve liberation. The second one is the vision of the increase of experiences. So this is the second one. You can tell from the title, it's basically the same as the previous one, just expanded somewhat. The increase of experiences. So the various types of mental experiences like bliss, clarity, and non-thought are not taught here. This is because the measures of the path are undoubtedly undeceiving. That is, they are true. Since the experiences of the appearances of primordial wisdom outwardly appear, the measure of liberation can be determined within awareness. So awareness is the key in Dzogchen in terms of the ultimate. Oftentimes we use the word rikpa, which is pure awareness. The awareness before you become aware of things. It's the nature, the essence of mind. This is probably the profound special value of this Dharma practice. It is extremely secret, great, swift path. Then, by practicing the previously explained teachings according to your guru's instructions, sometimes the expanse and awareness will be clear, and sometimes it will be obscured. Now, this could be a very literal thing of the clear sky sometimes and sometimes having clouds in it, but it could also be a reference to the actual appearances that sometimes they're very clear and other times they're simply not. Okay? They will vary a little bit from time to time. By continuing to practice with diligence, the expanse and awareness will separate from the point between your eyebrows, and they will appear directly before your eyes, that is, outside of your eyes into the expanse, into the sky. So by doing that, it begins to do that. So the separation between the eyebrows being referred to is a separation outward. So the projection goes from the eyes out into the sky. The appearances of bindus will first appear the size of lentils, so they're fairly small. The expanse will appear the size of 1 cubit. The cubit basically is from the elbow to the tips of your fingers. So that covers, if you just hold your arm out here, covers basically your field of vision. The Vajra chains of awareness will move like a shooting star. Now, it's a little bit difficult to know for sure here exactly what he's referring to, because one of the most common appearances that we see are things that appear somewhat like shooting stars. They're white, and they kind of dart about initially in different directions. Those, it turns out, are actually white corpuscles in the retina of the eye that are coming about and moving about that cause that kind of an appearance to actually happen. Through the continuing to practice, the appearance of the expanse of 5-colored light will spread out, appear horizontally and vertically, like a spear, like a form of a weaving that pervades the sky in front of you. And so sometimes this is referred to as being like a matrix or something. So there's lines going up and down, lines going across. So it's a little bit like taking a very loosely woven cloth and pulling it up in front of your eyes so that you can see through the openings in the cloth. But you can see these lines in the sky. Now, it doesn't always happen. Not everybody sees this. Not everybody sees it every time, which is generally true of all of these things, that they do tend to vary a little bit. But other kinds of things can appear as a part of this, and this is one of the things that is commonly referred to in various texts as one of the kinds of things that we are likely to see. Then inside it, bindus will appear the size of a handheld mirror, and the Vajra chains of awareness will appear moving like a swift flight of a bird. And one of the things that often happens is that in the beginning, it's more commonly referred to in the first vision than in the second vision, because usually the stabilization of these visions is a characteristic associated with the first vision. He's referring to this in the second vision, but these chains, the bindus and so forth, move about. And what happens is that as we move our eyes, if we're not real stable with our eyes, those things will tend to move. And so as we learn to stabilize our eyes, then the bindus themselves will also stabilize and the chains will stabilize. We can see them more clearly as a part of that. But one of the things that we're told not to do is sometimes they don't appear right directly in the middle, the most obvious point of our observation. So maybe off a little bit. And if you look to see it, it goes off, and you look to see it, it goes off. So it continually moves when you try to look directly at it. So what we have to do is learn to stabilize our point of view and just notice it over here, even though it may not be quite as clear. So that's a part of learning this practice. The next paragraph, by continuing to practice, the expanse appears like jewels, webs of light, half lattices, grids, metal screens, the top of spears, arrows, 1,000-petal lotuses, lights of the sun and moon, castles of primordial wisdom, swords, vajras, wheels, curved dragoon knives, flames, and fish eyes. So all kinds of different things. I could probably add a few things to that list, but it's a pretty complete list of the kind of things that begin to appear, particularly in this second vision. Things become more elaborate, and we begin to take on visions of other kinds of things. It continues saying bindus appear the size of a clay bowl, so they can be a little bit larger. Before they were described as being by lentils, now the size of a small bowl, so they may increase in size as well. The Vajra chains of awareness move like a deer running around the meadow, and I addressed that just a moment ago. By continuing to practice, light appears filling your country. Now that, again, is a little bit difficult to know exactly what he might be referring to. He could be referring to the field of vision that we have, because various kinds of lights do appear in that kind of an experience. But usually later on, more likely in the third vision, even when we're not sky gazing, we begin to see lights. You may be seeing rainbow lights. You might be seeing things appear as being made of light, and so forth. So those type of things tend more to occur in the third vision, so I'm not real clear which of these approaches he might be specifically referring to here. The bindus appear the size of a round metal shields. So now we've gone from lentils to bowls to round shields, so they can be quite large. The Vajra chains of awareness move like a slowly moving deer, so now they're slowing down a bit. Then, by continuing to practice, light fills the entire universe. It pervades wherever you look. The expanse and awareness are clear both day and night. So this is what I was referring to, is that those appearances of the rainbows and the nature of everything being light, which is actually literally true. Everything that we see is light. What we're actually seeing is nothing more than light. We think that we're seeing objects, but all we're really seeing is the light bouncing off of objects. We're not actually seeing the objects themselves. Okay? So you begin to understand that everything is nothing more than light in that sense, in terms of what we're actually seeing. Also, within each of the bindus of the Vajra chains of awareness, the legs of enlightened bodies appear. Within the Vajra chains of awareness, very subtle enlightened forms of the five families will appear, and these will stay without moving. When such arises, this is seeing the appearances of the bardo in this life. Thus, there will be no later bardo. So again, in the second vision, usually it's described as we begin seeing these parts, like a leg or a torso, a head, a face, those kinds of things. But usually not the complete figures, although toward the end of that you may begin to see a complete figure. Usually not a whole family, though. The families generally are associated with the third vision. So in the second vision, it's usually parts and perhaps an entire figure of a deity. You might see a Buddha inside of a bindu, for example. So these are the kind of appearances that begin to happen. They begin to slow down, they begin to stabilize at this point, and so we have fairly clear visions. And the idea of light, not only in the sky, but also imbuing the rest of our life, day and night. At the top of 51, then, the value of the vision is the increase of experience of the value of the vision of the increase of experience is twofold. Temporarily, all enlightened qualities of the increase of experiences are attained. So temporarily, enlightened qualities are beginning. We begin to experience enlightened qualities. Ultimately, the appearances of the bardo are liberated into their own place. So we begin to view them as a Buddha. And when we did the tantric practices, we're beginning to think of ourselves as a Buddha. We're beginning to see things as a Buddha. We're beginning to hear things as a Buddha. We're beginning to understand everything as a Buddha might, until we begin to actually become a Buddha. So now we're just pushing the envelope, and we're beginning to master this at a more subtle level in terms of how a Buddha actually begins to experience these things. But in addition to that, we get the benefit then of not going through the bardo as a part of this. Now remember that when we get into togal, what we're talking about is manifesting in the form of a rainbow body. Okay? So instead of going through the bardo, we manifest as a rainbow body, and we don't go through the bardo any longer. The third one then is the vision of the climax of awareness. Since the appearance of the expanse pervades everything, there are no appearances of earth, water, fire, water's in here twice, and water at all. Inside all the bindus and the Vajra chains of awareness, there is Virachana with Akasha Datvishvari, his consort, Vajrasattva with Mamaki, Padmasambhava with Buddha Lochana, Amitabha with Pandara Vishini, and Amoghasiddhi with Samayatara. So the Buddhas, the five Buddhas, as well as their consorts. In the direction above, there are the five deities of Virachana. In each of the four directions are also mandala clusters of the five deities of the five families of fathers and mothers, the deity and consort. These mandala clusters appear by hundreds of thousands and innumerably. They are inexpressible, appearing to pervade the limits of all of space. So when we did the visualization doing generation stage practice, we visualize the deity, the main deity. We visualize the family of that deity, and we visualize then all of space around them, because the mandala in which they incorporate, the palace they incorporate, is vast as space, and it's completely filled, like a sesame seed in a pod is the expression often used. And that's the same type of thing that is being referred to here. You yourself also appear luminously upon a great lotus. Above your crown are bindus stacked up like metal bowls in numbers of 5 or 9. Between the heart centers of you and the deities of the mandala clusters, threads of light, like multicolored braid, connect. So from the heart, our heart, to the heart of the various bindus, where there are these deities, are rays of light going out, like we're all connected. Our hearts are all connected. And so since there are innumerable ones of these, it's not like just a single ray of light, but there are innumerable ones all over the place. After this, your material body does not appear and is liberated as the Sambhogakaya. So this is the rainbow body. When we begin to take on the actual rainbow body, the elements of the body dissolve into light. Then, even if you do not practice, the appearances still do not change. At this time, outwardly, since appearances are liberated into luminosity, the appearances of material earth and stones naturally dissolve. Inwardly, since illusory body is liberated into luminosity, your body of flesh and blood naturally dissolves. Secretly, since afflictive emotions are liberated into luminosity, the appearance of the two obscurations naturally dissolves. Most secretly, since the enlightened bodies of primordial wisdoms appear, the pure realm of Akanishta naturally appears. Now, conceivably that could be another Buddha realm as well, not necessarily locked into that one Buddha realm of Amitabha. But in this case, the light was referring to up above as Amitabha in different areas. Oh, I guess it was Virachana in different areas. So Akanishta is kind of the more generic Buddha field. Since unsurpassed knowledge blossoms into primordial wisdom, the mandala of all knowable things naturally arises. So that kind of omniscience of a Buddha appears. The value of the vision of the climax of awareness is twofold. Temporarily, even though you do not meditate, awareness climaxes. Ultimately, through recognizing the Sambhogakaya, clinging to the body itself is self-liberated. So those are the characteristics of the third vision, with all of these families, Buddha families and so forth, collecting in innumerable numbers and stabilizing, and our own body transforming into light and so forth. Then the fourth vision, the vision of being consumed into reality. Outwardly, the increase of visions is consumed, so it dissolves. Inwardly, the reality of the illusory body is consumed. So even the body it dissolves. Secretly, the mind of realizations is consumed. All thoughts dissolve. All words and confusion are naturally consumed. Thoughts of clinging to things that appear and do not appear are consumed. Aside from the appearance of your fingers within light, you are free of perceptions of samsara and nirvana. Appearances are not existing in essence at all. At this time, enemies of the elements cannot harm you. The sun and the moon no longer appear. Perception of moving and sitting dissolves. Thoughts are transparent, leaving no trace. Clairvoyance is unobstructed. You abide as nothing more than an appearance from the aspect of compassionate energy. So you are consumed into light. All of the obscurations also dissolve and disappear. All of the elements disappear. All of those other things you dissolve into Buddhahood. The value of the vision of being consumed into reality is twofold. First, temporarily it delineates the boundary of mastering the levels of the four visions. So the description gives us an understanding of the four levels. And then ultimately, after seeing the vision of being consumed into reality, you will definitely attain Buddhahood in the rainbow body without remainder. So nothing is left behind. So we'll take a little break.